Alright, this is the other game from that tournament. This is the finals of a Japanese tournament, Braidon versus H2O. Maybe not the finals even. Who saw that? If you were watching, you saw it. So this is Japan Mirror in Siberia. I really liked how the scout spawned over here. He quickly set the gather or the transfer point over here to the tower and proofed his scout to the tower so that he wouldn't have to walk that distance. Like that's next level. I wouldn't do that, but I guess it saves him a little bit of time, and that extra second could mean the difference between a treasure or not. So here we go. Braidon, are you not, okay, I was going to say, are you not going to build a consulate? But both players are going to make a consulate. Because this is a Japan mirror, we're probably going to end up fast forwarding through some of this early portion of the game. I mean, let's be honest, we all kind of know how this goes, right? So for those of you who don't know how this goes, both players make a consulate, both players make a shrine, you ally with the Japanese, well, you ally with the Portuguese consulate, you make your shrine right before 10 pop. You go to 12 or 13 pop with villagers trying to idle as little as possible. You drop your Teshuga shrine. Other than that, gather treasures, prioritizing getting wood and then food treasures in that order if possible. Only stopping for gold treasures if absolutely need be. So both players making their consulate, allying Japanese consulate or Portuguese consulate, and putting it down. I do like that H2O's is getting a little bit of more map vision with his, and it looks like we might have a little bit of a scuffle that may ensue over this potentially location here. We do have a 110 wood treasure, and it looks like all sides, all monkeys are going to get involved. Both players, of course, did make their consulates. Both players are certainly in a good position. I do like that H2O is using his Orchard Rickshaw to scout as much as possible in the early portion of the game. And both of these players are just beating each other with wet noodles, essentially, at this point. There's really going to be nothing to gain from this. We can see both players sending scouts back. Looks like, ooh, H2O has identified another treasure here, which he wants to go for instead. And it looks like Braidon's going to settle for this 90 wood treasure. Funny enough, the scuffle that we had over this treasure here is no longer be an issue, because both players are attempting to go for something other than that as well. One thing I do want to briefly point out about the technique that Braidon is using for gathering this treasure. You notice he stunned both tigers. He worked the one tiger down to pretty low HP, and then this scout has begun to switch targets. He's now shooting at this second tiger, and you might ask yourself why that happens. The Japanese scouts have the unique ability called Divine Strike, and Divine Strike can hit for a maximum of 70 damage, which means that as this tiger approaches 70 damage, if you have multiple scouts shooting at it, you can have multiple Divine Strikes, and you're thus wasting DPS and time that the tigers are stunned, and thus HP on your scouts. And when you already have a fairly low HP scout, you want to try and get your DPS as evenly distributed on these tigers as possible. So once he gets the tiger low enough so that it's soon going to be in Divine Strike range, he switches targets to try and save as much damage as he can. And we'll see whether or not that happens. 60, we'll see if he gets a Divine Strike here. Didn't there. Didn't there. So he didn't get a Divine Strike, didn't end up mattering, but obviously there he got one there. So if that would have happened at 70 damage, it would have just been extra damage. There he got one for 36. So little thing, but at the end of the day, sometimes it can matter. It can save you a little bit of extra HP. Can help you take the treasure a little bit quicker when you get 2 big Divine Strikes as well. H2O, meanwhile, has been using his time to be building over here, or gathering from this over here. He is going to be able to take it. I don't think Braidon, even if you were to realize what's going on, would be able to get there in time. The one thing that this kind of does do for H2O does split does split him up a little bit in terms of his scout. He'd ideally like to have one of his scouts like in position down here already, which he's not going to be able to do, which does kind of hurt him a little bit. We do see Braidon has his scouts very nicely positioned. He has them completely split up, whereas H2O's both gathering from that treasure. We're fairly close to each other, and he's going to have to walk one of his scouts a fairly long ways as a result. I also see a little bit of jockeying for position going on here. I think H2O is just trying to block the foundation of a potential red shrine for as long as possible. And because he did get that big treasure, of course we realize he is going to have more villagers gathering wood, which is going to help him in the early portions of the game. So we'll have to see what happens. Braidon is going to get a nice quick age up in. I'm torn about this. Obviously H2O prefers to only build with 1. I prefer to build with 0. Every Japan player has their own way of how they build the shrine. Braidon opting for 3. I've seen people like KnightBR opt for as many as like 4 or 5. I go with 0, and H2O goes with 1. So you can take your pick. There's merits for all of the above. I prefer to get as many shrines up and play as greedy as possible in the transition, especially in a mirror as possible. And it looks like Braidon's going to opt for something that has become affectionately known as the Siberia build, just because this is kind of the only map where you really ever see anyone do this. And we'll see whether or not H2O does it himself. It was a build that was popularized by H2O against I Am Grunt in the WCG finals, which basically results in you sending your 4 villager shipments twice instead of 600 wood first, leaving you with a very strong economy. And ending with you having eventually a Dutch bank as well. And it looks like both players are opting for that build as well. So we can see both players sending 4 villagers. H2O getting himself a nice early market. I mentioned I like to get my market right around between 90 and 100 pop. H2O looks like favoring something very similar. Surprise, surprise, I pretty much use his builds. So that's why I make my market when I make my market. Other than that, shrining going fairly well for both players at this point. Braidon's shrines do penetrate a little bit deeper into the blue half of the map, which is obviously good for him. Taking up more of the hunts is definitely going to be good. He can always go back and rebuild on these safer hunts at a later date. But sucking up big patches of the hunts very early in the game on the other side of the map is certainly going to be good. Well, it looks like he's also going to finally pick up that 140, or 110 rather, wood treasure. Single barracks has been built, second 4 villager shipment being shipped by both players. And we can see we do now have the end relations coming up for from the Portuguese consulate. Both players essentially doing mirroring builds at this point. Both have a single barracks. And this is just a fairly standard way to play a Japan mirror. 160 shrine pop versus 110 shrine pop, so stopping for that treasure obviously has hurt H2O a little bit. Also not having his monks efficiently split at the start has hurt him a little bit. He did get some nice treasures and does have more units out on the map earlier in the game as a result. But that's maybe not as important as having the extra shrines. We do have diplomatic intrigue coming right now. I do want to mention that diplomatic intrigue, this is something that I up until recently I hadn't really thought that much about. But when you're destroying your consulate, or not destroying your consulate, but ending the relations, make sure that you don't choose your next consulate relations until the diplomatic intrigue comes, because this is something a lot of people don't realize, but the export cost actually changes by 75%. You save yourself effectively 75 export by waiting for the diplomatic intrigue to come, which can then later be reinvested into like Bushido Tech or something like that, clubs, anything like that. So we do notice that Braidon has ended his relations, and we'll see whether or not he's smart enough to not ally with Dutch until his diplomatic intrigue comes. Knowing the caliber of player he is, I'm assuming that that will be the case. continuing to build as many shrines as possible, getting the very relevant market upgrades, even dropping the last barracks right before the diplomatic, or before it ended. He did not actually do it, so he allied with Dutch before the diplomatic intrigue comes. That does save you 75 export. He's going to get the bank, but he would have 75 extra export, which allows you to get a couple more units out, clubmen or whatever. We do see that H2O, meanwhile, on the other hand, has levied that fact, so he has not made diplomatic intrigue until after, or changed consulates until after diplomatic intrigue. And it looks like we're just having some little exchanges. H2O trying to control the map, doing a good job, getting a little bit of an exchange. And so far, things are looking pretty good. I think Braidon's slightly behind. He does have his bank wagon out slightly earlier. They're on effectively even ground in terms of shrines, but H2O has slightly more units out at this point. Everything, honestly, look, it's pretty much bang even, honestly. You can't, like, it's really just going to come down to probably the fights. A couple units taken for free there. Both players obviously shipping Ashgar Attack as their next card. You usually have time to ship 3 cards before you ship your Ashi Attack. In a traditional Japan mirror, you would do 600 wood, followed by 4-ville, and then 600 or Ashi Attack. However, on this map and in this situation, we do note that we had both players opting for 4-ville, then diplomatic intrigue, and then shipping that. H2O getting a little careless with some of his units. I did like the fact that he tried to harass his opponent's gold gathering a little bit, but he's been taking some not so effective trades as a result of that. In terms of population, that has hurt him slightly. At the end of the day, probably not going to matter that much, but it is something that once you get the Ashi count going in the wrong direction, it can be hard to turn around. Meanwhile, Braidon splitting up his army, going to go and try and take some control of the map on the right-hand side. I like that, and it looks like both players working their way eventually here back towards Japanese isolation. H2O, where's he at? He hasn't quite solved just yet, but I would expect to see them dissolve their consulate relations here pretty quick. Braidon continuing to step forward, trying to look for an opening to either engage this army or kill some of these shrines. Does get off a little volley there, is going to take a unit, maybe 2. And at the same time has split up here very nicely. Is getting some free shrines. In terms of shrines, both players about even. Braidon down by 1, but is soon going to make up that difference here, both on the left and the right side of the map. And what is H2O doing? Is he trying to age? Is that maybe what he's trying to do? Yes, he is trying to age. So this is going to be a fairly critical point in the game. And I'm going to pause here just to discuss what we have going on here. So we have H2O aging, opting for a tech advantage. He has sent Ashi Attack, he has sent 4-ville twice, and he has sent Diplomatic Intrigue. Whereas Braidon, his opponent, has shipped 4-ville twice, Diplomatic Intrigue, Ashi Attack, but is now shipping the Daimyo as well. So he's opting for a more H2 focused play. In terms of unit count, we can see he's at 86 population versus his opponent's 57. So in terms of raw population, he's considerably ahead. He's even getting Bushido. He's tore down his consulate alliances, switched it back so he can really spam units and get out a lot of units. But what he's neglecting as a result is a tech advantage that H2O within the next 2 minutes will soon have. And so that's something that he has to either identify that his opponent is playing a little bit more sheepishly and that he can maybe make something happen by putting on timing pressure, or else he has to try and quickly identify and age himself, and we'll have to see how that ends up. It's certainly not floating a lot of resources at this point, so aging up doesn't look like it's the best of ideas. Certainly with the Daimyo coming, that looks like something that's very H2 focused, and it looks like he's at least got an inkling that his opponent might be doing something. He's even passing up this free shrine that he could be tearing down, and it looks like going to apply time and pressure. At the same time, H2O, instead of keeping his army idly by, is going to send it out to try and draw as much pressure as possible. At this point, if he can try and pick off little groups of units, draw his opponent to a place where he's maybe not expecting units to be, catch some villagers napping or something like that, maybe he would be better off. But I think he's realized, like, hey, something's not right here. Like, his whole army, or what he presumes to be his army, is chasing like 20 Ashies over here, which are obviously trying to stall for some period of time, trying to buy him some time. And as a result, he marches into his opponent's base, and what does he see? He catches his opponent aging. So a very good identification there. H2O is falling back with his units, does have his daimyo sent as well. At this point, the age up is about 2/3 of the way complete. A very good Minuteman pop. Gets a full surround on the daimyo and actually kills it. But what it's going to come down to now is the daimyo and the impending unit pop, enough to push back Braidon. Braidon's working with a 20 population advantage, although he's slightly behind in tech and is soon to be and even more of a disadvantage in tech. So something needs to happen soon. He needs to bust, like he needs to bust this, and it needs to happen soon. The town center is going to fall, and there are quite a few villagers inside of it. And if he can just even kill all these villagers, or kill most of these villagers, I think he'll be perfectly fine. The club's going into cover mode. The villagers are eating a lot of damage, allowing his Ashies time to continue to fight. He does still have the daimyo providing the upgrade as well, but he is losing so many villagers. Whew. I think I've even watched this game before, and doesn't he make like some sort of a miracle comeback? So the age up does complete, giving him a pretty nice tech advantage. The Yumis are going to help him when he's just standing still. He does have a daimyo advantage. He's going to have another 10 units pop out. He does have the resources available to get some of the very important upgrades, and he is going to kill Braidon's stuff. So we're going to pause again now and take count of what we have. So we have, essentially for Braidon, no military, literally zero military, some Ashy queued up and on the way. We do have the Golden Pavilion dropped, meaning he's going to be aging soon himself. He's sitting at 43 villagers, which is obviously good. His shrine count still remains high. He's up at 200 shrine pop. Looks pretty good so far for him. Everything is looking really good. H2O, on the other hand, caught by surprise, down at 18 villagers. The one thing that he has going for him is he has a standing army, so he has 21 military pop, and he's soon to have the disciplined upgrade, as well as still having his daimyo alive. So he's got a very small window where he needs to make something happen. As we can see by the replay is actually only about halfway over, so obviously something must happen. He's trying to recover his economy behind it, sending 7 villagers. Still has a bit of food left on his cherry orchard. Has no town center, at least immediately available, but he does have a standing army. He does have a tech advantage with the Golden Pavilion and the Ashy about to finish. And his opponent has only just now started to age, so Braidon has to realize that he got a big advantage out of that, but he's not out of the woods just yet. Building another barracks, realizing he's going to need to slam out the production. Might even be realizing that he's going to potentially lose some production against the impending timing push that's going to come. And we can see, where are these Ashies pinpointed? Where are they rallied? They're likely rallied like right to the TC. They know they need to do damage, and if they're unable to do damage, he effectively loses, right? He's working with like 1/3 of the economy. Shrine pops are still about even, but at the end of the day, he knows he needs to make something happen very soon. And we can see, where are they rallied? Right to the front of the base, right to the Teshuga. Going to ignore the shrines completely and just try and get some sort of advantage. And so here it is. I mean, his units have arrived. He has an army. He has a daimyo. He has a fairly significant advantage in attack, 28 damage Ashies versus 36 damage Ashies. meaning that his Ashigaru are quite a bit stronger. And his opponent is quite far behind in tech. Realize he has to not only finish the Golden Pavilion, he has to also get the upgrade, and he has to keep enough of his economy alive to actually be able to make units behind that. So not out of the woods just yet, but very close to being able to convert the victory. And so he just does have to convert the victory. Ashigaru stepping forward, taking down a very critical piece of structure. If you're able to take down the Tsuga Shrine, certainly a good thing to be able to kill. Will cut your opponent's production down. We do see Minutemen coming, Ashi's coming. Realize all he has to do is just survive. As long as he can survive, his opponent doesn't really have a lot of economy behind this. He has remade his town center, but behind all of this, there's really not a lot of economy to speak of. And so even if he's taking poor trades, almost any trade at this point is probably a good trade. Just due to the fact that any trade that you can get essentially is a good trade for you, just because your opponent doesn't have the eco to catch back up. Braidon does hold off the pressure. He does have close combat coming. And I would say from here he's in a very demanding position. Still maybe slightly behind in tech. H2O is getting paper cartridge and flintlock both at the same time. But at this point, his ecos are just really not that good. Does have his town center reestablished. Has pretty good shrines, but wasn't even really able to get the Tsuga down. And from this point, actually, I don't know how this game lasts this much longer. Braidon is soon going to have Discipline Ashi, he's going to have close combat, still has both of his wonders up, like everything is looking to be significantly in his favor. So we'll fast forward ahead a little bit. Ashi attack, or Ashi upgrades both finished, going straight for the throat, trying to knock down some more stuff, and I don't mind that. I don't mind that at all, one bit by Braidon. I do like the fact that he decided just to kill the bank. Sure, he lost some units, but guess what? He knows his opponent doesn't have nearly the economy he does. He has a lot of infrastructure up. He can just slam all units like crazy. And so just trading 15 Ashi for the bank, kick the already weak economy of blue down a little bit more, and just use the economy that you have to reproduce those units. So nothing wrong with that. Continuing to split up his opponent. Realize his opponent maybe has a slight tech advantage. Remember, he does have a paper cartridge and flintlock as well. But if he can just split him up and keep his army split so that he can't really ever get one big mass together, he's going to be perfectly fine. And so we can see that's what he's going to do. So he kills the bank, splits up some Ashi, makes his opponent have to run and chase him down, continuing to split him up. Just take down structure at this point. And although H2O is a good player, I don't think he can dig himself out of this hole. There is not a lot he can do. He did ship 7 vills again by the looks of it. 52 vills versus 38. Is slowly catching up. Does still have a little bit of a tech advantage in terms of the flintlock paper cartridge. In terms of shrines, still sitting at 180 pot versus the 200 of Braidon. So not too far behind in those terms, but is starting to power ahead a little bit in eco here. Not so sure about the rice paddy rickshaw shipment. I think honestly just 7 vills or refrigeration would have been a better call. Obviously does want to set up his economy the longer the game goes. Could even just have shipped 2 chariot orchard rickshaws and just continue to gather upgraded berries. H2O is doing some very good things. Is using his Ashies to split his opponent up. Is trying to raid his way back into the game. Obviously this is something that he became very well known for in the later portions of T80, winning WCG against Grunt with this very aggressive, like, Ashi raiding style. But at this point, well, he's actually getting a lot. He's actually almost caught up in villagers. He's actually 41 villagers versus 44. And he's ahead in tech. Like, how's... I mean, Braidon's still got a lot more resources floating. He's got more shrine pop. He's got more units. I mean, 94 versus 62. He is slightly ahead in every regard, but the fact that this game is even close is very surprising. 44 villagers versus 41. when H2O was down to 17. Braidon finally slamming out the 7-vil card. I don't like that. I think his card choice here in H3 has been kind of poor. He got so far ahead. Yeah, okay, that's the right choice. Either that or refrigeration. Either of those two is a perfectly adequate choice. I don't like the fact that he sent the rice paddy rickshaw. Still has a gold mine here that he could defend. He has map control with superior numbers. Could even defend this, like with a castle or something. At the end of the day, he canceled it again and shipped 2 flaming arrows. I think he's just made poor choices in terms of H3 shipments. He got so far ahead with his early aggressive timing push, and then he's just made poor choices in H3. I think progressing towards the next stage. Village accounts 56 versus 43, remaining about even. But just in terms of raw military, shrine stuff like that, Braidon's still obviously ahead. And although H2O is continuing to raid, I don't know that it's going to be enough to be able to pull him back into this. He is getting some villager kills. Obviously, that's definitely helping. The Ashley Micro is pretty good by both players, both splitting well. Here comes the second round of Minutemen here coming in. Very smartly put into cover fire mode in order to take more damage and give his Ashes as much time as possible to deal damage. And I don't believe it. Like, is he actually going to hold this again? He is, but there's no way he can hold against this reinforcing batch. Like, his economy was just kicked too hard in the teeth, and it's just too hard of a recovery. It was actually, and just to get to this point where he's almost back to even, was very impressive. He's actually only 1 villager behind at this point. But that, once again, I credit that kind of to more mistakes by Braidon. He still has both of his 7 villager shipments available. Hasn't sent refrigeration or royal mint. Like, instead, just like shipped 2 flaming arrows, which, I mean, in this fight, right? Like, 2 flaming arrows isn't going to make a difference in this fight. All they're really doing is slowing down your Ashes. They're just lagging behind. Maybe going to help pull down the infrastructure a little bit, but at the end of the day, not really going to do that much. 7 Vils refrigeration would have been better choices. Finally cleaning up some of the clubmen over here, and this is finally looking like a point where we're maybe going to end. Still, this was actually insanely close for what it's worth, right up to the end. But I don't think H2O has a way to fight this. Not against these units. Trying to get a flank in here. Maybe, is he just going to go for a base trade again? No, he's just trying to get a flank on the flaming arrows. So here he comes on the left side. Does get one of the flaming arrows, but yeah, just too much damage here by Braidon's units. More units coming, Daimyo repositioning to be able to affect as many of the Ashes as possible. Does get the TC down smartly. The villagers immediately start to repair. Braidon going to lose everything again, but once again, has killed a lot of villagers. He's killed a lot of his opponent's stuff, killed his TC. It's just how many times before we hit the point where we just have the straw that breaks the camel's back, and this has got to be it. I mean, the replay's coming to an end. Fact of the matter is H2O got kicked in the teeth again. He's down to 44 Vils versus Braidon's now 58. Shrine Pop still remains top-notch for Braidon, and at this point, I don't think anyone can disagree. There's really no way to recover. I thought that the first time, but obviously having the all-seeing eye and being able to see how much longer the replay goes. There's maybe one little timing push, timing back left here where he's got a daimyo out and his opponent doesn't. But now the transition has been made to rice paddies. Braidon's set up for the late game considerably better than his opponent is. And at this point, he can just continue to trade away. I don't think there's much that his opponent can do. Just going to chase down the units. You could just trade those again. I think that would be fine. H2O is out. What is this, like 5 Ronin? Like, man, poor card choices in H3 by Braidon. All things considered, that's really what it came down to. Just not great card choices by Braidon. But when you get ahead this much, I guess it doesn't really matter. You can afford to send 5 Ronins as long as you've got twice the army that your opponent does. And this is going to be the last fight. The daimyo pretty exposed here. He's going to end up dying to another volley of Ashi. And there's just too much here now. The villagers are all on the TC. Everything is completely exposed. The Golden Pavilion going to go down. The Teshuga has already gone down. The Shrine Count continuing to fail. And this is the point where the game effectively ends. It came down to a timing push. This timing push was really good. His follow-up from the timing push, not so good. If we look at the post-game, we can probably see the most telling point. We have this military population, and this is the disparity, right? H2O is aging with the Golden Pavilion. As a result, has quite a few fewer units, but does get aged up. Is able to kill the whole army and still maintain some sort of a population advantage. But at that cost, it goes from almost even villagers at 38 down to 18. And does actually recover it. Gets himself a little bit back in the game with some pretty clever raiding. But at the end of the day, this is like in a PR 50 match where two guys are both really good. This is way too much of a difference to make up. He does a pretty damn good job of making it up, but at the end of the day, that's like going down to 18 villagers at 13 minutes in a Japan mirror is far too hard to recover from. And I think it just came down to a good timing push by Braidon. Sure, he lost a lot of military there, but he also killed his opponent. And this was the point. He got aged up. He was stabilized. And then I don't think this should have ever happened. Like, H2O was just getting really good trades here. And it was partly, I think, just because he picked bad cards in Age 3. Obviously, the Ashi attack, HP is always good. But I think he could have just made 7-vil refrigeration or something like that. Instead, he opted for, like, the mill card and 2 flaming arrows and 5 Ronin. Like, that's a head scratch right there. He even had berries still available to him, so a good builder, a good timing push, a good execution up to 13 minutes, and then the last half of the game, the last 13 minutes, were pretty much made up by 2 things. Good raids by H2O with Ashies in the back of the base, and some poor card choices, I think, made by Braidon. But at the end of the day, a win's a win. Can't argue with results. So that's going to be the end of the stream for today, guys. Thanks for watching. Thanks for tuning in, as always. I'll be back maybe sometime next week before my normal time, but for sure next Wednesday at 21 GMT. As always, it's been a pleasure casting. Thanks for tuning in, and hopefully we see you all next week. Take care.